Дорогі освітяни, ви вже вдруге отримали можливість обирати, за якими підручниками навчатимуться ваші учні. Незабаром на вас чекає дуже відповідальна подія – конкурс підручників для 8 класу, де потрібно зробити правильний вибір навчально-методичного забезпечення для своєї школи. Ми підготували для вас 7 підручників, один з яких з англійської мови. Усі підручники отримали позитивні відгуки, надати гриф рекомендованому «Ну». Пропонуємо вам дізнатися більше про цей підручник та оцінити його змістове наповнення. Уроки розділів чітко структуровані, кожен урок окремо сфокусований на вправах і завданнях з лексики, граматики, аудіювання, говоріння, читання та письма. До кожного з уроків основного блоку також уведено розділ «Чи знаєте ви?» з культурологічною інформацією, яка має безпосереднє відношення до тематики спілкування, а також ідіоми та фразові дієслова, з якими передбачено роботу на уроці і вдома. До складу авторського колективу підручника входить один з найвідоміших науковців України та Європи в галузі викладання іноземних мов, професор, декан факультету іноземної філології Харківського національного педагогічного університету імені Григорія Сковороди та кваліфіковані вчителі-практики з багаторічним досвідом роботи в загальноосвітній та спеціалізованій школі, а також з досвідом викладання англійської мови як іноземної в США. Сучасний формат підручника, ілюстрації та тексти повністю відповідають віковим особливостям учнів. Перевагою підручника є інтерактивний онлайн-додаток, який дозволяє працювати з мовним матеріалом підручника в режимі онлайн. Незалежна експертиза, яку було проведено доктором наук в освіті, виконавчим директором у сфері стратегічного планування та інституціонального розвитку університету Прат, Нью-Йорк, США, Володимиром Брилером, засвідчила високий науковий і методичний рівень видання і його повну відповідність сучасним вимогам до викладання іноземних мов. До підручника розроблено книгу для вчителя у форматі серії «Мій конспект» з розробками уроків на відривних аркушах та безкоштовний інтерактивний додаток, що дозволяє здійснити експрес-контроль навчальних досягнень учнів. Інтерактивний додаток – це онлайн-тести з матеріалами підручника ВГ Основа. Усі матеріали будуть розміщені на сайті Didactica.in.ua у відкритому доступі. Онлайн-тести доповнюють можливість перевірки знань учнів в інтерактивному режимі. Ми не обмежуємося стандартними тестами, один або декілька правильних відповідей. Серед варіантів завдань ви знайдете такі, як хронологія, розставити елементи у відповідному порядку, відповідність, знайти елементи з колонки А, відповідність з колонки Б, випадні списки, інтерактивні картинки та інше. Завдання доповнені графічним флеш- та відео-аудіосупроводом за необхідності. Проходження онлайн-тесту можливо як на стаціонарному комп'ютері, так і на пристроях персональної електроніки, планшети і смартфони. Ми надаємо можливість учителю вести статистику за відповідями учнів. Інтерактивні доповнення до підручника допоможуть у цікавій формі перевірити знання учнів з певної теми підручника. Тож запрошуємо вас до користування. Також до підручника ми пропонуємо безкоштовно передплату на фаховий журнал на 3 місяці та доставку Укрпоштою підручників у школу. Чому слід обрати нас? ВГ Основа – вибір учителів протягом 14 років, лідер на ринку педагогічної преси та навчально-методичної літератури. Ми забезпечуємо вчителів необхідною методичною літературою, гарантуємо якість та змістовність наших матеріалів, надаємо повну інформаційну та методичну підтримку і гарантуємо доставку до кожної школи. Підручник було створено актуальним, практичним, функціональним, цікавим та сучасним, зручним для вчителя і для
Good morning, dear colleagues. I cordially greet you with all the holidays, with New Year, with Christmas, and with today's Epiphany. And I wish you success, great health, great wealth, and always being creative. Today we're going to talk about competence-based approach in language teaching. This is a trend of education in Europe and in the whole world and in Ukraine as well. But before we actually start, I would like to put an emphasis on the difference between the two words, the two terms. There is something wrong. Oh, okay. The competence or competency. What is the difference? Please make sure that you feel free to give your posts, your comments, your answers, and your questions if you wish, so that we could discuss something and it could not be only a lecture. So what is the difference between competence and competency? As you can see, when we talk about competence, we discuss and we mean what people can do, so their abilities, their knowledge, skills that they need to attain a certain goal. And competency is the way they do it, so the behavior, the procedures they use for attaining the goal. That means using the competence, the knowledge, the abilities and skills, and some sort of commitment. We're actually talking about the language competencies. There are a lot of them, and actually a lot of methodologies around the world define different methodologies, different competencies for using in the language classroom. And now what we suggest is looking at these competencies, and we're going to discuss them a little bit. So the first one is absolutely necessary for a person during his whole life, and this is the understanding of the position of a person in the world, his ability to understand the world, the ability to perceive the world, and the ability to identify the position and, what's important, the mission of the world. And in this respect, it is very important and critical to be able to choose the appropriate goals and make appropriate decisions in this connection. The next one is probably one of the most important, is general culture, because when talking the language, we necessarily teach the culture as well, as you all know. And this is why we have to have our students to be able to see the differences, the common things and the differences between their home culture and the world culture, the cultures of a certain nation and the cultures of a certain country, and what they are, those cultures. Those are a set of spiritual and moral values, like that belonging to a person, belonging to a humanity, or belonging to a single nation. That doesn't matter, and actually our learners are able to identify that by the end of our instruction, as well as some social family goals, events, traditions, and values. The importance of science and religion in the life, both in the person's life and in the life of the country, as well as the life of the whole world. And last but not least is the efficient ways of time management, both for work and study, for everyday life. The next one is especially important for us as teachers. It's the competence of cognitive and learning. And here we see that the first thing that the students and the learners must be able to do, I definitely use the word must, because it is the critical issue for the whole process of the continuous learning, the whole life learning. And it is setting the goals, is being able to plan the action, to analyze the actions, to reflect on the actions, and to assess self and assess somebody else. As well as it is important to be functionally literate, to understand the basic things, how to tell truth from facts, truth from fiction, how to measure things, developing different skills of measuring and cognitive methods like probabilistic or statistical or some else. the most important thing in today's world is being able to be media literate, or as we say, to perceive the information competence, which means all the ways that we work with information. Like, we search for information, we analyze information, we are able to select information necessary for our concrete purposes, we organize information the way we need it, we transform information if necessary, we are able to save the information and to share information for further use. Because nowadays, you know that all the world is information based. It's impossible to live without information, to live without media, modern media, to live without the internet and the database and the stuff. Something that is important for us as language teachers is communicative competence, but it does not boil down to merely teaching and learning the language and the language abilities or skills. Like you see, it's put as a last one in this list, and it's the listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. What's more important is the ability to interact with others, and it is not necessarily that it should be done in the foreign language. It refers to any language at all. So the process of communication and interaction, and it should be done easily with the people who are close to you and the people who are far away. And it includes culture-specific competence and socio-cultural competence. That means that you have to interact with people based on the knowledge and the ability to understand and perceive their cultures if they belong to different cultures. And it's very important for building skills for group and team activities, because nowadays it is very important, and a person must be able to unite in a group or team for performing a special activity or attaining a specific goal. And this absolutely one of the approaches that is very critical for modern education, group and teamwork. And in this respect, being able to take various roles in the group, social roles, I mean, the role of a leader, the role of an assessor, any other role in the group is very and very important. The competence of being a society member includes the variety of things that our learners must be able to carry out as members of a society. And these, as you see, are different roles in the society, in the many societies, like a family, and it includes being aware of family relationships, family responsibilities, and this stuff. And the wider roles in the society, in the bigger society, the roles of a consumer, manufacturer, the customer, and the seller, and the widest roles, the roles of a citizen, observer, representative, patriot, and this stuff. And the last one that we are talking about today is the competence of self-perfection, which means that the students may have, or better say should have, a continuous strive for developing themselves, both physically, spiritually, and intellectually. And that is a lifelong process. And this is something that we are going to motivate them for. In this respect, they are supposed to be able to rely on themselves and to regulate themselves emotionally and intellectually as well. In developing personal qualities, psychological awareness, and culture of thought and behavior is the process that will help them lead through their own future grown-up or adult lives. That's it about the competences. And now what we're actually going to talk about is how the approaches to teaching, to language teaching especially, differ when using traditional approaches or competence-based approaches, and I would really be glad if you could give your ideas about that. So what's the main difference? Please write it down in the chat. And let's have a look at the table. As you can see, the main difference, the principal difference in the approaches is in the result of teaching, the supposed result of teaching, what we're trying to achieve. In traditional approach, we may say that by the end of the teaching, our students know what to do. I mean, they know present perfect, or they know past simple, or they know the word order in the sentence. In the that necessarily does not coincide with what they actually need in life. So this is, like you may see, a set of some abstract knowledge about the language. And those who have worked in school for a long time may know when our students knew a lot about the language. They knew all the rules, they knew a lot of vocabulary, and at the same time they were absolutely unable to do anything with the language. So they knew about the language, but they were not able to use it. In this respect, the main difference in the approaches is that our students are supposed to say, I know how to do it. I know how to use this. I know how to write a letter. I know how to talk on the phone and this stuff. So you see the idea. In this respect, the main process transforms from reproduction in the traditional approach to production, because it is something that our students are supposed to do in their real life. They are supposed to produce something, and this is our role as teachers, to teach them how to adjust to the life, how to adjust to real life situations, solving real life problems. In this respect, what is more important, all students are different, all have different goals, all have different backgrounds, and that is why it is very important to pay special attention to students' autonomy and giving them the chance, the opportunity to work independently as much as possible, taking into account that they all are different and they have to be treated differently. How to assess? It is the critical question, and probably there will be no direct answer for that. I'm sorry, but there is no direct answer for that, because the process of assessment depends greatly on what you try to develop, what you try to achieve, and what kind of people you're working with. And in this respect, both students' autonomy and teachers' autonomy in this respect are very important. And have a look, it is some kind of accumulated ideas. What's the difference? The difference is that in acquired knowledge, in a traditional approach, we first acquire the knowledge, then we acquire the skills of using the knowledge, and then we possibly solve some communication problem. And the problem will be very often, as you know, very often they will be artificial, having nothing to do with real life, and it brings very low motivation of students to learn. What's different about the competence-based approach is that it aims at solving a real-life problem. So there is a problem set, and it is necessary to be solved. And the students need to know something, need to be able to do something to solve the problem. And that means that they must use the language for solving a real-life communication problem, or maybe not necessarily a communication problem, just a real-life problem, and that may bring a higher motivation for study, for learning. And the thing that I would like to point out is, at my strong and my personal belief, the most efficient approach for that, whatever competence we're talking about, is critical thinking, developing critical thinking. First, because that is, if the students are able to analyze, compare, contrast in the stuff, they are able to make inferences and conclusions. They are able to generalize, or vice versa, they are able to induce something. That is very important for them in any area of life. And if they are able to do that, they will be successful in performing any activity. And what is important in this respect is the individual approach to a student, because we must motivate a student by appealing to him or her personally, to backgrounds, to opinions, to values and beliefs. And we have to take into account, take into consideration that they have the right for their own opinions, for their own values and beliefs. And we are not gurus, and we must not tell what must be done, what must not be done, because a student is free for choosing his or her own way of learning. And that is critical about the competence-based approach. And the question creates, well, how can we create that learning, the competence-based learning in a real classroom? Do you have any ideas about that? I'm eager to see if there is anything in the chat. Okay, but before we do that, well, there will be a blitz contest concerning the competence-based approach, and the winner will get a prize, so be active. The question is like that: which of the teaching aims when planning a lesson will we consider the most important one if we work or pretend to work in a competence-based classroom? There are 4 of them, and please make your choice. The winner will get a prize. Okay, and have a look. Since we are aimed at achieving some practical goals, so practical activities, the main part of planning will be paid, and the most attention will be paid to developing the practical aims, to formulating the practical aims, which is what real life activities will students be able to perform at the end of the lesson, or at the end of the unit. One real life activity. And that is critical. And all other aims and goals will support the practical aim, because if we set the practical achievement that our students are supposed to attain by the end of the lesson, we understand what language means, what knowledge and skills we will use for that, we will develop for that, and what competences and skills must be developed apart from the language, and what competences and traits must be developed for performing these activities apart from the language that the developing and the upbringing goes. All right, so no comments. All right, and the prize was supposed to be the copy of the textbook for the 8th grade for that. Anyway, let's go on. So here are some free practical recommendations about how to implement the competence-based approach in the classroom, in the real classroom. The first one is something that we know very well of. It's 3 steps of learning. So activating the knowledge and the content, structuring the knowledge, and applying knowledge. That is the same. That remains the same, although the stress should be moved a little bit for challenging learners to think. Critical thinking. The next examples are given on the basis of the project of the new textbook for the 9th grade. This is one of the lessons, just one relevant, one actual lesson of the book, and the topic, as you can see, is considered to be very close to environmental protection, and the idea is we must use practical life context. So we do not need to talk abstractly. Well, choose something from real life. Choose something which is relevant to learners. That means the individual approach, like based on their skills, based on their backgrounds, based on their knowledge, based on their opinions, values, and beliefs. And choose a challenging task. What do we do for that? Have a look at the example. Yeah? We set the meaningful context first. The title of the lesson and the first warm-up task are designed to set the meaningful context for further learning, and trying to involve students' thinking and interaction activities. And in this respect, well, we again put an emphasis on developing critical thinking, wherever possible. Even if you have a very simple task, it is very easy to think over a bit about a little bit of critical thinking. So think about how, what and where the students can compare, what they can analyze. It can be anything. And have a look at what is done next in this. So pair work, work in pairs. And the discussion that was mentioned, there was a lecture, actually, and the lecture about the environmental problems. And the idea is that the meaningful research should be done. So they should discuss the problems discussed before, and thus activate their previous knowledge on the topic. And because this actual lesson is devoted to developing reading skills, and they have to categorize it. So, well, the critical thinking, yeah, analyzing, categorizing, comparing, contrasting, and this stuff. And all that should be done in groups, in pairs or in groups. Next, we appeal to personal background. We use private knowledge because it is very easy to ask a question, do you agree or disagree, and try to explain why. Because this appeals to personality of a student, to a personality of a learner. And if you have a chance to give the task of discussing and interact and discuss and analyze and this stuff, that will encourage critical thinking and interaction. As you can see, the text is not very long, it's not very big, and it is not designed for reading with full understanding. It's just again, developing the reaction to the problem. That learning situations must imply a wide variety of group, team, pair, and whole class interaction. And in this respect, when you assign a task for the class for doing that, think about maybe doing from general to specific, or from specific to general, like start discussing in the whole class and then move on until you are in a pair, or start discussing in a pair and then move on until you discuss it with the whole class. That will work okay. And where possible, especially in the higher levels of study, like in the high school, but not necessarily, it may work as well okay in the primary school. Try to set meaningful global context for that. So from local to global. compare what's happening in your community, in your local place, with something that compares outside your local place. Be more global, like starting from your village or city or region or district, moving on to the wider area, and then moving on to the country level, and then moving on to the continent level, and then moving on to the global level. That will develop the ability to understand the similarities and the differences of the processes that are taking place. The next one is absolutely necessary for competence-based classroom. Use real-life samples, use real-life teaching materials, authentic, most important to do, because if the students have a real-life sample in front of their eyes, they can reproduce it, and they see the sample, how to use the language actually in the real-life situation. And don't be afraid to use some statistics, some infographics, all the stuff. It's just an example. And the current text we're talking about is the genuine, authentic text about the later problems in United Kingdom. And this is very important because they can further compare it, and they do compare it with their community, and then they compare it with Ukraine. So this is the text about this. The text, have a look. They talk in pair, then they discuss about the two countries, the United Kingdom and Ukraine, if they have similar or different problems. And again, you appeal to personal background because every student, they live in different places, they live in different situations, they live in different backgrounds, and they have different opinions. They may have different opinions about all the problems discussed. And what's important, it's good if you can add something authentic, some authentic statistics, like here, as you see in the Did You Know sections of the unit. And those are very nice if you would like to, say, start a lesson with them, if you have to some time for warming up a little bit, so you can discuss the statistics, because the statistics are all about the topic of the unit, and this topic is saving the background, protecting the background, and all the statistics are relevant, they are authentic, they are about the United Kingdom. And the final test for the lesson is some kind of a summary and some kind of conclusion, so you can see what was being done to handle the problem. Is the problem being solved, or is it not being solved? What is being done? Who must be responsible for that? And you present. So the task is to present your ideas in the class. And here we use, I'm not going to read it, you can see what we do, what we use, what approaches we use. And whatever, the language is not used for the sake of the language. The language is used for the sake of solving a problem, a real life problem. Of course, it's a mocking problem, of course, but we have to bring up the feeling of participation, the feeling of presence in the problem, within our students, to be able to motivate them for doing something, for solving the problem. And two more recommendations. We must actually, within or without the classroom, we must promote autonomous learning of our students. Here are some strategies, what should be done. But what's most important for me is the ability to be able to make mistakes and not to be afraid to make mistakes. Because it's something that prevents our students very much from using the language. They're afraid of making mistakes. And if we encourage making mistakes and we do not pay attention to mistakes, but do pay attention to the interaction or the result of the interaction or the result of the communication, that will be much more promoting or encouraging our students for using the language. And what is important about the role of a teacher must be a little bit changed. So we traditionally instruct, but now we have to move on from being instructors to being guides, facilitators, and mentors. And that means that we allow the students autonomous thinking, we allow students autonomous learning, and we just guide them on their process for them to move in the right direction. And the last one is that assessing should be done not of learning, but for learning. And it should be done what is critical about the assessment in competence-based approach. It should be done constantly, every lesson. And what is encouraged is using self or peer assessment for being able to identify the mistakes and to use them, this knowledge and to use the skill of eliminating the mistakes in the future. Understanding that every person makes mistakes in his or her life, and that's normal, absolutely normal. And to learn on their mistakes is the key idea. In this respect, what is recommended by key methodologists that work in this area? Never use tasks like multiple choice or true false or filling in the gaps as final assessments. Never. Try to make your final assessment as real life as possible. It can be writing a letter, it can be a dialogue in a cafe or restaurant, depending on what topic you are discussing. It can be a phone talk, it can be a job interview or whatever, but never boil down the assessment to mere testing. That doesn't work. That can be used in the initial areas of learning, in the initial areas of teaching, or in the middle of teaching to check the language, not the communication, because those tests are never met in real life. There are no real life situations, and they're absolutely impossible to use in the competence-based classroom. All right, I was very glad to talk to you today, and one more time, bless you, be happy, be wealthy and healthy, and be creative. Thank you.